we go, ladies and gentlemen. It is Wednesday, May the 4th, 2011. We're listening to today's edition of the Ugly Truth podcast, heard on this increasingly fine podcast network, theuglytruth.podbean.com. Welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. We have a very interesting program lined up for you today. I want to take a quick moment to thank all of you out there who have been sending in the very kind emails and other forms of correspondence concerning the quality of the program, where it is going, as well as the very generous donors who have helped in supporting this month's expenses for putting this program together. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, the fury is not dying down a bit concerning Osama Bin Laden and his death. I would invite those of you out there who would like to put this in perspective to go and rent the movie Gladiator that was made, it's been a good 10 years, starring Russell Crowe, and pay attention to the theme of the movie where you have these people being hacked to pieces in the Colosseum, and the crowd, the Roman crowd, is sitting there cheering, they're drinking, they're eating, just having a grand old time watching people being hacked to pieces. That movie wasn't made just to glorify, the typical Hollywood blood, guts, and gore, ladies and gentlemen. The maker of the movie, Scott Ridley, I believe, is who was responsible for that one, was trying to make a point, which is this is what has become of our Western society, is that we sit and watch as people are being butchered before our very eyes, and we think it's funny. We cheer it on. And as you will see watching the movie, all of this bloodletting that was taking place as part of the storyline had political reasons for it, because the emperor at the time, Commodus was his name in the movie, he knew that the only way that he was going to be able to maintain his position over a corrupt political system was to keep the people fat, stupid, entertained, and happy, and that this was the best way to do it was with these games. That is what has become of our society, ladies and gentlemen. The absolute insanity out there over the death of Osama Bin Laden, while it is troubling enough as it is all by itself, it's the implications of this that we really have to be worried about, and I do underscore the word worried. I'm looking at a story here, which you can access if you go to my website at theuglytruth.wordpress.com, entitled Poll, Americans Approve of Bin Laden Killing Even If It Brings More Attacks. This is coming from USA Today, and it's talking about the fact that a good number of Americans were polled in the aftermath of the news that Osama Bin Laden had been killed, and they were asked whether or not this killing, if it results in more terrorist attacks against the United States, is it worth it? And to them, by an overwhelming majority, indeed, it is worth it. You see, that's a very bad symptom, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, the reason that we have lost tens of thousands of our young people serving in uniform in places such as Afghanistan and Iraq, and now Libya and Pakistan, ostensibly the spark that started all of this was the attack on the World Trade Centers by Osama bin Laden. So this is a very bad symptom of a mental disorder that has gripped the American people, where they figure that the way to dig themselves out of a hole of their own making is to dig deeper. You see, that is just a form of mental illness that you really can't do anything with that. Unfortunately, this is what has happened to our country. Another interesting story here, which you can also access by going to the uglytruth.wordpress.com website, is entitled Congress Turns on Pakistan. Now, this is the most ominous thing to come out of the whole bin Laden drama, folks, is how Congress all of a sudden has taken an interest in Pakistan. Of course, those who follow the news know that this is nothing new. We have been killing the people, innocent people in Pakistan now for years with these drone strikes. But now all of a sudden, Congress is taking a very bellicose tone in talking about Pakistan. One in particular I'm looking at here. This is coming from Politico.com. Congress expressed fury at Pakistan Tuesday for its role in housing Osama bin Laden for the past several years, as a wide range of powerful lawmakers are raising new questions about the billions in foreign aid that the United States has spent propping up what many believe is an unreliable ally. Well, folks, as we have said on this program many times, and as our guest today is going to confirm, one of the biggest strategic objectives of this entire war on terror, in fact, it may be the biggest strategic objective, is to denuclearize Pakistan. Pakistan is the only Islamic country that has the bomb, that has the ability not only to protect itself, but if it were to extend that nuclear umbrella, it could protect other Islamic countries as well. You see, Israel and the United States cannot go about their business of slaughtering innocent men, women, and children in the Islamic world if suddenly Pakistan decides to step in and say, no, we're not going to allow this to happen. Now, the fact that our Congress has taken this very troubling new position with regards to Pakistan should be worrying all of us, okay? Because as I pointed out, Pakistan is not Iraq, it's not Afghanistan, it's not Libya. It has nuclear weapons, lots of them, and it has the means of delivering them. That is the topic for today's program, ladies and gentlemen, and I am joined by my very special guest and good friend, Zaid Hamid. He has been on this program several times. He is coming all the way to us, all the way from Pakistan. The reason I decided to have Zaid on, in addition to the fact that he is an expert when it comes to discussing matters such as these, is that he put out an excellent new video, which, again, you can access by going to the uglytruth.wordpress.com website, and you can see for yourself. Zaid has done the math here, and he has figured out that this latest revelation concerning the death of Osama bin Laden, that what is really at stake here, what the powers that be really have in mind, is to start a war with Pakistan. Zaid Hamid, welcome to the program, and as always, thank you very much for coming on.
No, thank you, Glenn. It's absolutely my pleasure being with you, and my best wishes to all your listeners.
Thank you, thank you. First of all, the video that you made, a very inspirational video where you basically are speaking one-on-one between Zaid Hamid and the powers that be, meaning Israel, the United States, and India, and you're saying, look, we know what you're planning to do. We know that this bin Laden story is just a precursor to you eventually invading our country and destroying it. Don't even think about it, because we're not going to sit by and allow this to take place, as has taken place next door in Afghanistan and in Iraq. Is that an accurate statement, Zaid, that the bin Laden drama that's taking place right now is just a precursor to a military invasion of your country?
Mark, there is absolutely no doubt about this. I mean, whatever version that the American regime is putting out is actually insulting the intelligence of the sane people of the world. How can you ever believe that a man they've been supposedly hunting for 20 years and who has died 9 times before, they ultimately kill him in Pakistani city of Abbottabad and then say we dumped his body in the sea and we are not even releasing the video or the pictures? Second, never in the American media would you hear again all you have heard in the past, that during the so-called operation, an American Apache helicopter was also shot down.
Mm-hmm.
And troops were killed. And the helicopter wreckage is there. So everybody has seen this. If you Google the helicopter wreckage and shot down in Abbottabad or crashed in Abbottabad, so-called as they say, it's there. But we know it has been shot down by the Pakistani forces because they had sneaked in to Pakistani airspace.
Mm-hmm.
And when they reached that town, they had not declared their identification, who they were, and the air defense unit shot them down. Only then they exposed themselves, saying, hey, we are supposed to be your allies on a mission here. And then the contingency, and all the contingency contracts were mobilized, so the other helicopters were not shot down. So, but whatever that compound, and for my money, they would have killed cows and sheep or sooner Afghan family there. Who knows what happened there? I mean, every information that is coming out, controlled, released by the CIA. That's it. There is absolutely no independent corroboration of anything. And the fact of the matter is that we know Osama never lived there. We know it was not there. But that is immaterial now. Whether he was there, he was not there. Whether they killed Afghan family or somebody else's family. But what matters is what is going to happen after that, the fallout. And immediately after that, we saw that. You see, the American regime, the Zionists, they are compulsive liars. They lied. They lied on Iraq's weapons of mass destruction. Colin Powell bluffed the world. They released pictures, photographs, and slides which were all fake, which were all created, which were orchestrated, photoshopped by the CIA, to fool the world into believing that Iraq had chemical and biological and nuclear weapons. And they declared a war in the Middle East, killed over 1.5 million Iraqis. Can you even imagine the figure, 1.5 million, Mark? And 4 million Muslims of Iraq had to migrate to other countries. And look what they have done to Iraq. So basically what they have done is, they have not broken down Iraq supposedly into 3 or 4 countries. Though even within Iraq, there are regions which are totally autonomous, like Kurdistan has become autonomous and southern Shiaism is autonomous. But what they have done is, they have decapitated Iraq. They have destroyed its military potential. Okay, there is insurgency, unrest, violence, riots, kidnapping, hostage taking, that's going on, but that's not a threat to the state of Israel. So this is what they plan to do. This is exactly what they're doing in the Middle East. Breaking down huge Muslim countries either into smaller countries like they've done in Sudan, or creating enough anarchy so that that country remains embroiled in its own internal civil war, conflict and unrest, that they are not able to pose any threat to any neighboring adventures by the Zionists. So this is the game plan. Now, as far as Pakistan is concerned, we knew that. For many years we knew that. Ultimately, they're going to come after the Pakistan's nuclear weapons, because not just that we have the nuclear weapons, we also have the delivery mechanism. And then we also have an ideology which is fiercely passionate about its own history, about its ideology, about its identity, about its own faith. And nation built on ideology, nation which is strong enough to defend itself and defend the people of its own faith and other good human beings of the world, they are dangerous nations. Now, there are 2 countries in the world which want to expand their borders. One of them is India, which want to expand into this Indian subcontinent, entire, and the other is Israel. But the point is, cannot expand as long as Pakistan offers a nuclear umbrella to the Muslim world.
Yes.
And Pakistan has defense mechanisms and arrangements with the neighboring countries, particularly with the Arabs, especially with the Saudis, and we have religious, emotional attachments to those, because Muslim holy lands are in Saudi Arabia. Muslim emotional attachments which Pakistanis have for the rest of the Muslim world was intense. That's why David, the founding father of Israel in 1948, had told his nation that we are not afraid of the Arabs, but we are afraid of the friends of the Arabs. We are afraid of Pakistan. Because it's the Pakistani state which is passionate about the Arabs. We can deal with the Arabs. We can overrun them. But the nation of Israel, the state of Israel, has to be conscious of the threats posed by the state of Pakistan. And Pakistan has proven this also. In the 1968, 67 war, 73 war, when the Arab armies and air forces were decimated, it was Pakistani armed forces, Pakistani air force, which had been deployed in Syria, deployed in Egypt, deployed in Iraq and Jordan, and Pakistan air force had shot down Israeli aircraft in air-to-air combat. If you look at the statistics of it, Pakistan Air Force is the only air force in the world which have actually shot down Israeli aircraft in air-to-air combat. And that's a big statistic.
Yeah, let's back up just a second here, Zaid, and remind the folks who may not know the history of it. When you're talking about the ideological formation of an Islamic state, meaning Pakistan, what you're talking about here is that Pakistan was born out of its devotion to religion. It was part of India, and the people of that region said, we don't want to be a part of this. We want to be our own country where we can govern ourselves according to Islamic law and our Islamic tradition. So this is very important for people to understand, is that when it comes to Israel and the United States viewing Pakistan as a threat, it is the fact that Pakistan is the most Islamic country in the world. This is the reason why, in addition to its nuclear weapons, its willingness to fight, that it stands as the most serious threat to the expansion of Zionist and Western imperialist projects in that part of the world.
You see, when the Richard Holbrooke had become the representative of the Obama regime in this region, he developed a doctrine called the AFPAC doctrine. Mm-hmm. If you remember, that doctrine meant that battlefield now would not only be Afghanistan, but Pakistan would also be considered a battlefield. This was the part of the Obama doctrine ever since he had taken power. The AFPAC meant the Afghanistan-Pakistan battlefield. So we knew back then that they are going to extend the war into Pakistan sooner or later. Mm-hmm. But the fact was, you see, Pakistan army was strong. We are nuclear armed, very disciplined, very organized army. So the only way to soften up Pakistan, only way to weaken Pakistani armed forces was to support multiple insurgencies inside Pakistan, multiple gangs and groups and terrorist groups which would wage a massive suicide campaign, terrorist campaigns, bombings, explosion of improvised explosive devices, and attacks on the Pakistani state and the forces. And the last 5 years, 35,000 Pakistanis have died. Almost one attack every day on Pakistani state, on security forces, on people, on schools, on children, in hospitals. I mean, you can't even begin to imagine the kind of life. I mean, almost turning Pakistan into Baghdad, into Iraq. Mm-hmm. And this softening up operation has been going on for the last 5-6 years. The war which they have imposed on Pakistan, in the modern term, that is called the fourth generation war. These wars are not fought by the armies on the borders, but these are fought by irregular forces in the urban environment. Mm-hmm. Fought by the militias, by the terrorist gangs, by the groups. And they weaken the state from within to that extent where the external forces can move in to break the country into smaller countries, giving you the example of Yugoslavia. Mm-hmm. You see, Yugoslavia was one huge country, fifth largest in the world, the most strongest country in Europe. And when the NATO decided to break it down, they instigated civil war in it. Mm-hmm. Bosnians fought with the Serbs, Serbs with the Croatians, Serbs with the Bosnians, Albanians, Macedonians, Montenegro. And when the country was on the verge of implosion, the Dayton Peace Agreement was signed by NATO and the Americans. Richard Holbrooke was the envoy. Interestingly, even at that time, he went in, signed the Dayton Peace Agreement. 6 countries were created out of one land. So this is precisely what they plan to do with Pakistan. The problem with Yugoslavia was that NATO supplies did not go through Yugoslavia. They were in the sea. And Yugoslavia was not a nuclear weapon state. So when they want to dismember Pakistan, and if they cannot dismember Pakistan, the part is that you have to bog down the Pakistani forces so much that Pakistan army is fighting a war of its own survival, mm-hmm. and they do not pose any threat to Israel when Israel starts to expand. So the point is, either you take away the nuclear assets, that's ideal. And the second thing is that you embroil Pakistan in a massive civil war, that Pakistan's command and control center breaks down, power structure breaks down, resource breaks down completely, communication system breaks down, bridge and roads break down, the leadership is killed and decapitated, and the Pakistan army is distributed into small pockets, a war, a reactive war on its own borders. In that case, Pakistan, even the around Pakistan army, having the nuclear weapons, would not have the capability to launch them mm-hmm. to pose any threat to the state of Israel.
I see.
Because launching the nuclear weapon means you have to have elaborate satellite communication networks, codes, systems, GPS positioning systems. You need to have latitude, longitudes, everything, defined coordinates. But this is elaborate technology-based things. Mm-hmm. You don't launch nuclear weapons like catapults.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Right.
And so the thing is, if you take down the communication and command system, the C4I, which they call the command, control, communication and intelligence networks. So, in that case, Pakistan army would still be incapacitated. So what we are seeing now is that on the moment Osama Bin Laden drama was created, mm-hmm. we find the language of the NATO and the American changing towards Pakistan. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, all the militant terrorist groups who were supposedly allied with the Al-Qaeda, they threatened to wage a massive war in Pakistan against the Pakistani armed forces, not against the American, interestingly. Even if it's true that whatever happened there in Abbottabad, but Pakistani forces were not involved, it's the Americans who were involved. So technically, any group which is supporting Osama should be waging a war against the Americans, not against Pakistanis. And immediately you find the language of Indians changing as well, because Indians want to fight to the last Americans. They're so smart. They don't want to wage they won't want to wage their war with Pakistan using their own troops, using their own resources, but want the NATO and the Americans to beat Pakistan up, to put it simply.
I see.
And that's why the Indians are offering always to the Americans, Afghanistan is not the problem, Iran is not the problem, we give you the bases, Pakistan is the epicenter of terror, let's join hands and beat Pakistan up. Because taking out Pakistan's nuclear assets is the ultimate goal of the Indians, it is the ultimate goal of the Israelis. That is why we find Indian, Israeli, Zionist, American access, and as well at the same time the access to the terrorist groups which are waging a war of iteration, insurgencies and terrorism inside Pakistan. And interestingly, all these terrorist groups who are waging a massive war in Pakistan are based in Afghanistan, right under the patronage of Indian RAW and American CIA. So, and this is interesting. This is the axis. So on one end, Pakistan is now stuck between the proverbial jaws of an alligator. On one end, you have these terrorist groups. On the other hand, you have state terrorist groups like CIA and RAW and Mossad and Israeli government and Indian and the neocons. So this is where Pakistan stands today. And in the coming months, I can assure you that you will see the entire world community going to the United Nations. On one hand, they're going to wage a war of terror in Pakistan. I fear they want to turn Pakistan into like Iraq. Already, the most incompetent and corrupt, ruthlessly sold, treacherous government is in place in Islamabad, which has sold the country down the throat of IMF, World Bank, and the neocons. And with this level of government, media, they have spent almost $50 million just this year buying out Pakistani media. The entire Pakistani media cartels, channels have been purchased, bought, penetrated, the anchors, the analysts, everybody is massively bought. So you have a massive psyops which is supporting the concept of Pakistan falling apart, promoting the concept that the Osama Bin Laden was actually found there and Pakistan is at fault and ISI is a terrorist organization and Pakistan army should be put under embargo and Pakistan nuclear assets should be taken away. Pakistan's own media is doing this, paid by the CIA. And on one hand, you have a psyops going. On the other hand, you have the terrorist and insurgency campaign going. And on the third axis, you have this international diplomacy and politics going now, which is now going to encircle Pakistan using the so-called world community, the same world community which authorized NATO raids on Libya. This kangaroo courts, these kangaroo environments, where they all sit together and decide this country is a terrorist and we should bomb the coalition of the willing so-called, the way they lied about Iraq, the way they passed a resolution on Libya, and now they are going to gang together in the next couple of months, create a global environment, and try to put an embargo on Pakistan. Already Congress is saying we should stop the money we are giving to Pakistan.
Right.
And on the other hand, they will put the pressure that since Pakistan is facing insurgencies and terrorism, Pakistani nuclear assets are not safe. They are going to fall into the hands of the terrorists. So the international coalition must move in to secure Pakistani nuclear assets. And since Pakistani armed forces are not going to hand over the nuclear weapons, that's why the world community should come and bomb Pakistan. And the moment they're going to bomb Pakistan, the terrorist insurgent groups from Afghanistan are going to move in, India is going to move their forces, and Pakistanis would be caught in a three-pronged attack from all axes. And this is the war that is building up, and by the end of the year, you will actually see it happening. God forbid, unless and until we have a patriotic government in Islamabad which can use the mobilize the political and the diplomatic clout that Pakistan can mobilize. Unless such a government is in Islamabad, I'm telling you now, that our next interview together may be through a war zone. I might be fighting for survival for myself, for my country, for my nation, because we know it's coming. We know it's exactly the same way the Iraqis were surrounded. Mm-hmm. They saw it coming. They could not do anything to prevent it. Pakistan still can prevent it, provided our armed forces overthrow this government, mm-hmm. bring in a regime change, mm-hmm. and take a stand. And which army right now understands this game, but they are stuck between a rock and a hard place. If they overthrow the government, still the world community would say, right. Military takeover, martial law, closure of aid and everything, and economy is already bankrupt, and army knows they will not be able to run the country. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If they let this thing happen, they see the country falling apart right in front of their eyes. While we speak, army commanders would be meeting tomorrow morning in Rawalpindi, discussing what to do. I mean, this is really a crisis situation for Pakistan now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this, Zaid. I have read that the military and the elected government, that they do not get along. That the military knows that the government is corrupt, but that you have very strong Islamic elements in the military who they know what's going on, they know what's coming. But as you said, what can they do? If they overthrow the government, then they're going to be accused of instituting a coup, and then all of the things that are in place already to isolate Pakistan, to cut off aid, to choke her out, will be put in place anyway. What kind of contingency plans do they have to where they can maintain use of these nuclear weapons that the West and Israel are intent upon taking from them? I mean, they had to have told the United States, listen, if you shut down our infrastructure, we will still manage to be able to launch our nuclear weapons. So don't even think about it. How can they maintain that deterrence, that threat of nuclear retaliation? You know this better than I do because you speak with the people there and you know the system there. What kind of system do they have where they can maintain this deterrence, even if the West goes through with this plan of destabilizing Pakistan?
You see, one thing which is very fascinating about Pakistan's geopolitics is that Pakistan is the strongest Muslim ally of China as well. Mm-hmm. And everything that Pakistan does in terms of its defense, Pakistan has two parallel programs going. One, Pakistan's defense cooperation with the West, where Pakistan is taking the F-16s and the Western equipment. On the other hand, Pakistan is simultaneously developing joint strike fighters with the Chinese Air Force. Mm-hmm. And Pakistan's entire nuclear and missile program is actually built with the help of Chinese. Mm-hmm. So Chinese satellites we use, Chinese communication equipment we use, Chinese aircraft, their radars, so basically Pakistan is the most strongest ally of the Chinese military establishment as well. Mm-hmm. So this is where the backup is. This is what the insurance policy of Pakistan is. And second thing is that Pakistan Army still knows that NATO's 150,000 troops are in Afghanistan. If there is a turmoil in Pakistan and the NATO supply lines are cut, because 80% NATO supplies goes through Pakistan, 64% of their fuel go through Pakistan, and if NATO pushes Pakistan beyond a certain limit, or there is an unrest or chaos which is not in control of the Pakistani establishment, that chaos can actually block the NATO supplies, which would choke the Americans and the NATO in Afghanistan, where they would be sitting ducks for the rising insurgency of Taliban. So it's a catch-22 situation for the Americans and the NATO as well. This is what I said. These are the advantages that Pakistan have, which Yugoslavia did not have. Mm-hmm. Yugoslavia was an ally of the Soviets, but at that time, even the Soviet Union had broken down. Mm-hmm. The Soviet Union could not come to help Yugoslavia. But China is the strongest rising power, looking the Americans into the eyes and standing behind Pakistan.
Let me ask you this, Zaid. In the event that hostilities break out between NATO and Pakistan, you talked about the 150,000 NATO troops next door in Afghanistan. How many men could Pakistan put in the field? Do you have a compulsory military service provision in your country where young men have to be trained in military discipline and tactics, to where if the government decided that it needed to arm the populace, that it would have a well-trained military immediately?
We are 170 million people. and we are martial races. In the entire northwestern region of Pakistan, the NWFP, the Pashtun tribes, and there are 5 million of them. Every house has got an AK-47 or a rocket launcher or a machine gun or even an anti-aircraft gun. We are a martial race. So Pakistan army is about 750,000, about 700,000 men. And then along with we have about 500,000 paramilitaries and then few 100,000 police. But every house in Pakistani rural area or household has some form of weapon or another. So the paramilitaries, the militias, the local volunteers, the tribals, Pakistan actually liberated Kashmir. The Kashmir that we have in Pakistan's hand today was actually liberated by the tribals from the Pashtun region, not by the Pakistan army. It was the tribals who fought against the Indian army in 1948 to liberate the Kashmir that we have today. And the people who are resisting the Americans and the NATO and before that who resisted the Soviets in Afghanistan were not the army of the Afghan National Army. They were the peasants, farmers, shepherds, the poorest people of the Afghan and Pashtun society who picked up arms, who fought against the Soviets, who sacrificed their homes and families, and since they are used to living on the bare minimum lifestyle, I mean less than $1 a day, that's their normal life. So you can't really destroy their homes, you can't really take anything away from them because they don't have anything at the first place. So when this is what even now in Afghanistan, the Americans and NATO are forced to say the AK-47 rifle is defeating the entire might of the American and the NATO forces. So this is what we have. So on ground, if you're actually talking about the armed men which can be raised in Pakistan to fight against, that number can actually run up to 5 million fighting, fully armed men.
Okay. Trained
and
men,
that's the
meaning,
figure I'm giving you.
I mean, not just that they are armed, but they are trained. They know how to fight.
That's our culture. Every one of us knows how to use AK-47. Even right now when I'm talking to you, in my bedroom corner, there's an AK-47 loaded.
I love it. I love it. Good. Well, that's good to hear. Not because I want to see any of my fellow Americans get killed, but there is something about deterrence that I hear up in this part of the country where I live. You can go around town with a pistol strapped to your side, and nobody's going to give you any trouble. Now, I happen to be a very small man. And it's amazing how much respect I will gain from much larger people when they see that I'm carrying that I'm packing heat. So anyway, well, let me ask you this then, Zaid. Now that this thing with Osama Bin Laden has been loosed on the world, and more importantly on the American people, I mean, we see all of these ridiculous stories coming out, okay? The United States now today has announced, Obama himself has announced, that they're not going to release any pictures of Osama Bin Laden. Supposedly, they threw his body into the ocean, okay? All of these excuses, this seems like an act of desperation. Do you think that they planned on doing this at this time, or did the situation in Libya with the killing of Gaddafi's son and grandchildren, did it pose such a damaging public relations problem for the United States that they decided to pull this Osama bin Laden thing out of their hat in order to take what was done to Gaddafi's family off the front pages?
You see, there's a joke circulating around in Pakistan right now is that next time if there's a tsunami in America, they are going to blame Osama bin Laden since he's in the sea now.
Exactly. That's good. Yeah. Well, do you think that they planned on doing this Osama bin Laden thing now? Were they waiting? Were they hoping to do this later? Because clearly things have been heating up between the United States and Pakistan for some time. The whole Ray Davis scenario that was taking place. Do you think that this was on their timetable, or is this an act of desperation on their part?
Mark, I personally feel very strongly and about two facts. But before that, I would like to quote the Marilyn Albright, the lady who used to run the U.S. foreign policy a few years back. Way back in 2003, she had actually said on record that Osama bin Laden is dead. It was just before the time when Bush's own period of governance of the presidency had not finished. So Marilyn Albright had given a statement that Osama bin Laden is dead, but the news is not being broken until the very last part of the presidency of Bush, so that his ratings so that to help him out for the next elections. But since Marilyn Albright had broken this news, Osama Bin Laden news was not used at that time. But when Bush was leaving, he had handed over this region, an unfinished job, to Obama. Obama has been given an unfinished job, a job which Bush could not finish, and that job was to denuclearize Pakistan. Bush started this war. Obama had to finish it. But after 3 years, you yourself know in America, the American economy is absolutely burning itself away. Your American dollar is now no more the reserve currency in so many state banks. And dollar has been taking so many hits. Obama's own rating was less than 20%. Now, with this kind, and his new fresh elections are coming next year. With all these things, his unfinished job of denuclearizing Pakistan, the fact of the matter is, if they knew they cannot win in Afghanistan, he was in a hurry to deliver something for his next candidacy as well, to become the next president as well again, and also to mobilize the public opinion that before he leaves, whether he wins or not, but before he leaves, he wanted to put Pakistan in a position where this president, if he's re-elected, or the next president, should basically come and finish the job. So this is, the rabbit was taken out of the hat now. When is Obama's next election? 2012? So, and now what are his ratings? 80%? You see, so this is what happened. Dollar strengthened, gold went down, oil came down, Obama's rating went up, Pakistan was nailed, Pakistan became the epicenter of terror, these terrorist organizations vowed revenge against Pakistan, Indians got aggressive, Congress started to stop Pakistan support, Pakistan went into defensive, PSYOPs was launched in Pakistan. My goodness, so many objectives achieved by just one bloody drama.
Yes, exactly. Okay, if this is not enough, Zaid, if Osama bin Laden's death is not enough, what are the Americans and NATO and Israel, what are they going to do to put more fuel on the fire?
You see, already they are saying is accountability of the Pakistani security forces. Already the CIA is saying Pakistani ISI was hands in glove with Osama to protect him, because supposedly they pulled the rabbit out from a military town near a military training academy. And so now they blame it for the ISI which was protecting him. So ISI becomes a rogue organization. So in that case, if these kind of pressures continue to build on Pakistan internationally, they would go to the United Nations to declare ISI, which is basically the CIA of Pakistan. If you take away the eyes and ears of any country, that country is blind despite the huge size and despite all the weapons. So their focus, their intention now would be to nail Pakistani security establishment. That is the real thorn in their side. That is the real last obstacle. Because they have overrun the politics, they have overrun the economy, they control the media, but they control the energy infrastructure, but they do not control the Pakistani security forces. So, and this is what the way of the focus, and to destroy Pakistani security forces, like they have been doing in the last 5 years, they are going to support more terrorist and insurgent groups. The number of suicide bombings that have taken place in Pakistan, I mean, I don't know if any one of you has visited Baghdad and been on the streets. My goodness, I mean, you're traveling with your family and suddenly there's a car bomb going on one side I mean, this is horrible way of living.
Yes.
And this is the way of living we have been doing in Pakistan for the last 4 and 5 years. If you go to the city of Peshawar, that's a barricaded town, looks like a green zone. If you go to the city of Karachi, that's anarchic, like Beirut in the early 70s. You know, this is what they have reduced Pakistan to. And this is what they are going to do more now in the coming days. I personally foresee in the next 3 to 4 months, 2 axes are going to be very active. One would be the political and the diplomatic axis. They are going to mobilize international media, the Congress, United Nations to declare Pakistan a terrorist state, put embargoes, and put pressure on Pakistan so that Pakistani government succumbs more. On the second axis would be to support the insurgencies even more, so the Pakistan army gets so bogged that they are able to create an international case that Pakistan is a dysfunctional and a failed state and does not deserve to have nuclear weapons. That's the objective. Prove Pakistan a failed and a dysfunctional state. And they would go to any limit to achieve this. Any limit. And when the insurgencies or anarchy would get too strong, they would themselves move in saying that since Pakistan army is already bogged and already under pressure and under threat, ideally they would like Pakistan army to request them to come and help us.
Okay, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Zaid. China, this is the big question mark here as to whether or not China is going to step up to the plate and is going to exert her influence in order to prevent all of this from coming about. The Chinese, obviously, they are very shrewd players. They understand that they are under the gun as well. They are an emerging power, and they know that the United States and Israel is terrified of this. And the Chinese are very independent. They cannot be bought off the way that the West has been, and other countries who are under Israel and America's thumb. So how realistic is it for us to hope or expect that China is going to step into this thing and is going to say, no, don't even think about it, America. Don't even think about it, Israel. Don't even think about it, India. You're not going to play these kinds of games in our neighborhood.
You see, there are two power centers in Pakistan. One is the political government, another is the military leadership. You saw that in Egypt when the public wanted to remove Hosni Mubarak. There were 1 million people in the Tahrir Square protesting aggressively, trying to remove Hosni Mubarak. Military took over. And then there is a military rule in Egypt now. You don't even know the name of the ruler of Egypt. Egypt has officially become a headless state now. What the Americans had done was, they were fed up with Hosni Mubarak. They had seen he's an unpopular man. So they replaced one man with a military dictatorship of few generals. Because they had already bought off the generals of the Egyptian army. Similarly in Iraq, Saddam Hussein had a very strong army. They had Republican Guard, his army, almost 500,000 more. But the Americans had bought off the entire leadership of the Saddam Hussein's army. So when the Americans moved in, generals were not there, and army simply disintegrated. There was no fight. So this is what the Americans would want to do. For right now, Pakistan army leadership is patriotic. It stands, it's holding its ground. And it is not listening, it is trying to resist the American expansion into the region. And that is why you find NATO supplies being blocked sometimes, and Pakistan ISI protesting strongly with the CIA. There's actual war going on between CIA and ISI right now. So Chinese deal with the political government as well as the military leadership. Even if the political government is compromised, military always kept its relationships intact with the Chinese military. But the point is, if through this insurgency and terrorism, they are able to, Americans or CIA is able to eliminate Pakistan Army's leadership, or they are able to compromise any one of them, then Chinese would also be in a fix. Because, you see, and then that would be a very dangerous situation for Pakistan. But right now,
go ahead, sorry.
But right now, Pakistan's army's leadership is solid, it's intact, it's holding out, it's protecting Pakistan's interests and maintaining independent relationship with China as well. So for now we are safe. But again, as we said, the campaign of terror is going to be unleashed in the next few months. They're going to up the ante now. And what happens then? What kind of civil war takes place? What kind of anarchy takes place on the streets? That we need to see.
So realistically speaking, what we can expect to see is that you will have assassinations or assassination attempts on high-level military leaders in Pakistan's army and air force and the nuclear forces. Of course, all of this will be blamed on the terrorists operating in Pakistan. And what they will be doing is eliminating these leaders in order to prevent any kind of mutual defense agreement with the Chinese or anything like that. Now, if that happens, and I don't understand I don't know the Pakistani system as well, but I would have to assume that any kind of mutual defense agreement with China would have to be a political thing, not a military thing. So, obviously, Pakistan's government being as compromised as it is, you would not see any kind of mutual defense agreement with China taking place at a political level, correct?
This is absolutely right. You see, if the military leadership is eliminated, it will also create the case for the West to say, look, their own military leadership is not safe. How can they protect their nuclear assets? So that's one axis. And also, again, as you said, militaries cannot run diplomacy and politics. So the only option which Pakistan army has now is to overthrow this government and then take over, bring in a government of patriotic civilian Pakistanis, and then create a collective security bloc with Iran, Saudi Arabia, China, Turkey, and create a bloc. Because alone Pakistan cannot handle it then. Because we are too weak right now, because for the last 10 years, the wars with Pakistan, which have been fought inside Pakistan, have literally broken the back of the Pakistani economy. And so it can be done. It can be managed. Politics can be managed. Diplomacy can be managed. Chinese are just waiting around the corner for some kind of signal from Pakistan to move in or help. They would even like to come in physically to help Pakistan.
Really?
No issues with us.
Really?
No issues, absolutely. And Chinese have a strategic interest in Pakistan. They know we are their soft belly. If anything happens to Pakistan, I mean, the entire hope of the Chinese to get to the Indian Ocean would collapse.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's right.
So Pakistan is their strategic lifeline. And the Chinese are counting to the shortest possible route from China to the Indian Ocean, from China to the markets of the Middle East is through Pakistan, through the port of Gwadar. And Chinese know this. They also know the stakes which they have in Pakistan. So they will not allow Americans to overrun it, walk through it. And this would never happen, inshallah. But the fact is, I said, Pakistan would not break down. Nuclear assets would not be taken away. I'm only afraid of the Iraq-like anarchy.
Yes, yes.
And that they would be able to create because sooner or later this government will have to be overthrown. And either it is thrown through chaos and riot or overthrown by the military, that we need to see. But the fact of the matter is, when military would start to take hits, the men would start to die, when insurgents break out on the streets, then no choice but to take over. Tough times ahead, but but as we said, tough times do not last. Tough nations do. We know nothing is coming to us. We have prepared our nation for it. The video that you saw, which you mentioned, I posted on my Facebook and websites also. This is also telling the entire nation saw it. Everybody knows a war is coming. Everybody knows we have to. Everybody knows it's going to be asymmetric urban war, just like Iraq, fought in our streets, fought in our urban environment.
Are you seeing this? Are you hearing
that are being fought?
Are you hearing this on the street, Zaid, among the average Pakistani, that they understand what is coming and that they are actually making plans for what they see as inevitable?
Every thinking Pakistani knows that a war. But if you see the media, they're not talking about it because they fought off. It's like so many thinking Americans in America know that American government is lying and making illegitimate wars, but they have no say. They can't do it, even if their voice is not even produced in mainstream media, because that is controlled by the neocon Zionists. But we know for sure, we know that the leadership of the army, which is under severe stress right now, because every day Pakistan is losing officers and men in an ongoing war. So they know it more than anything else. Plus, I'm in contact personally with hundreds of officers in the armed forces, and I SMS them, text messages them every day, telling them what are the security updates. So we have access right into under the skin of the armed forces, and we have access to the youth of this country. Millions of youth in this country, in the Muslim Pakistani diaspora globally, they listen to us. They trust what we say, and the patriots in Pakistan know that this voice, whatever it speaks the truth. So they know. So we know what's coming, but as we said, I don't have the power in my hand except the power to convince and convey the message. The physical, administrative, military power remains in the hand of the military. And I'm trying to convince the military to do their constitutional duty of overthrowing a treacherous government.
Zaid, on a personal note, let me ask you this. You are internationally known. You are very loud in your opinions. Your opinions are, I think, very well-founded on facts. Have you noticed anybody following you? Have you noticed any kind of attention from dangerous corners? I can imagine that the United States and Israel are not particularly happy with the work that you're doing these days. Have you seen any evidence that they have their crosshairs on you in any way?
Mark, we live dangerously every day. And personally speaking, I mean, there are murder FIRs or murder cases on me. They have booked me for murder. I mean, I was in Rawalpindi, Islamabad, and a murder took place 1,200 miles ago in Karachi, a target killing, a street violence. and they registered the case against me. I mean, I'm banned on the mainstream media. They don't give me a television program. The state, even the Pakistani state channels ban me. They don't allow me to come and speak. If I appear on a television channel, I mean, then the channel gets so much of hammering from the government and from the CIA. They don't dare to call me again. And we know for sure there are every kind of terrorist asset has been launched to eliminate us. But God willing, Allah willing, we know. Our death is our biggest protector. The time we believe, we have faith that our time of death is defined.
Yes.
And nobody can take our life away before that. And till that time, nobody, no matter how much they try. So our motto is, we tell to our children, to all those people who listen to us, no matter what, we'll live with dignity. And when the time comes, we'll die with honor. So we look forward to it. We have accepted this path. We have accepted this dangerous path. Because if we do not speak now, if we do not raise this voice, if we do not spread this knowledge in our people, in our society, in these nations, then the cost that our nation will have to pay would be 1,000,000 times more, would be so staggering that would actually decimate our nation. Someone has to do it.
Absolutely. Zaid, I promised to only keep you for about 45 minutes because you said that you were on a cell phone and the battery is not exactly reliable, so I'm going to keep my promise to you and cut you loose here in just a moment. I would like to speak with you off the air, though. So if you would please just hang on for a moment while I close out the program. I will be right back.
You're most welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you just heard what I think was some very important analysis that you're not going to hear from too many other sources. I don't mean me necessarily, but rather my good friend Zaid Hamid of BrassTax.tv. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that Zaid is exactly right. I think that the entire Bin Laden scenario is designed to eventually widen this war to include Pakistan, a nuclear-armed country. It is extremely dangerous. We have just crossed into extremely dangerous waters here, as if things were not dangerous enough already. And for those of you out there who may be listening to this program, who support this war on terror, which really is what it all boils down to, folks, is that it is a war on Islam. Okay? That is what it boils down to. Israel and her interests know that Islam will always stand as a very effective counterforce to what she has planned for the world. This is why she has decided that 1.5 billion Muslims simply have to go. Now, I want you to just consider this mathematically, folks. I'm going to do this very quickly here because my friend is waiting on the other line. In fact, I don't even know if he's still there, if his battery has held out. But think about this, ladies and gentlemen. 1.5 million people have been killed in Iraq. And what has it cost our country? It has almost bankrupted us. Well, guess what? That's only 1/1000th of what Israel wants to see us do. So I want you to imagine the problems that we are dealing with now in this country, economically, politically, all the things that are the byproducts of this, of having been bitten on the neck by this vampire, all of the side effects of this. Imagine that it gets 1,000 times worse. Is this something that you are willing to do? Is this something, are you able to reach into your wallet and pay for the death of 1.5 billion, the deaths of 1.5 billion people? Because that is what we are involved with. This is the message that you have got to start spreading around to your friends and to your family and to your neighbors, ladies and gentlemen. And, you know, even if we manage to pull ourselves away from this thing now, it's still going to be ugly. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today. As always, thank you for attending. Thank you as well.